Well, first off, what's happening is, of course, just turmoil, chaos. And the why of it is because it's being manipulated. Right now, the markets are roiling because Standard & Poor has downgraded the U.S. credit rating from AAA to AA+. But what people don't understand is the largest stockholder in Standard & Poor's is J.P. Morgan. So they pull on both ends of the string and they manipulate the thing. That's why for years people have asked me, what stock would I suggest they invest in? I tell them, go to Las Vegas. The odds are better.
Right.
But, I do deal with the financial meltdown and what caused the crash and who's behind it and who has precipitated these, what has been known as liar's loans, in my new book, The $1 Trillion Conspiracy. But as you well know, Mike, because I think you're already into it, it's not strictly a financial book. It's about a lot of different things. But interestingly enough, they made me change the title to The $1 Trillion Conspiracy because my original title was Zombie Nation. And I use the term advisedly because, they call these banks whose liabilities outweigh their assets. They're broke, they're dead, but they've been propped up by taxpayer money and TARP funds, so they're still going through the motions of business, so they've been called zombie banks, okay? Well, let's look at the United States of America. We have more liability than we have assets. If every American sold every asset they have, and that's man, woman, and child, sold all their clothes, their TVs, their cars, their homes, it would total not much over $10 trillion. And yet today we collectively owe, depending on who you want to listen to, somewhere up around $14 trillion. So we owe more than we own.
and that doesn't even cover all the unfunded liabilities down the road.
Exactly. That's what they're more or less admitting to. If you talked about the unfunded liabilities, we're up into much higher numbers, and people don't even really understand what a trillion is. I mean that's a number that's just so far beyond, human comprehension that it's not even funny. But let's say, let me put it this way, because now living in Texas how big Texas is, right?
Well, sort of, yeah. Well, I haven't walked it, But.
Well, and you probably couldn't in your lifetime, and particularly if you made circles. But if you go from the Louisiana-Texas border to El Paso, that's pretty much the same distance between El Paso and Los Angeles. That's how big Texas is. So,
wow.
So to try to give you an idea of the number trillion, if you had a trillion, just 1 trillion square miles, that would encompass 3.7 million states the size of Texas.
Wow.
That's just an unimaginable number, isn't it? So,
yeah, it's incomprehensible to most folks.
Yeah, and yet we owe trillions, and worse yet, our current financial situation, of course, is totally based on the Federal Reserve System, which is neither federal nor does it have any reserves. It is 12 banks that are owned by private banks, which are in turn owned by private citizens, many of whom are not even U.S. citizens. And they totally can, by controlling, expanding or contracting the interest and money supply, they totally control our economy. And yet, when since its inauguration in 1913, there has never been a comprehensive audit of the Federal Reserve System. We don't know what they're doing or how they're doing it. In fact, in 2009, when Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, was asked by Congress, what have you done with our money? He says, well, we're a private concern. That's proprietary information. We don't have to tell you that. But now we have found out. We have found out some, but thanks to Ron Paul and others that have been trying desperately to get some figures, and they've finally pried some information out of the Fed. And what we find is, They have sent $14 trillion of our tax money overseas to prop up foreign businesses and foreign banks.
Right.
You know, come on.
It's a big eye opener for people out there. But the truth is, Jim, most people, most people haven't really been able to get into this. I mean, even though your book has been very successful, it's still just like my website, it's still only read by a small portion of the total population. I mean, the vast majority of the people out there have no clue and are actually even mentally incapable, it seems, of grasping what is really happening behind the scenes. Why is food becoming more expensive? Why are their dollars not stretching as far as they used to? They don't understand the erosion of the value of the money supply, how it's happening from the Fed and the Treasury.
Well, you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you don't know about something, you're ignorant about that, right? And
right.
So I think the problem comes back to the fact that the vast majority of people, and of course, obviously we're not talking about people who read my books or listen to your radio cast or go to your website. We're talking about the vast majority of other people who base their entire worldview on what they see on TV.
Right.
And when you start talking about TV, then you start talking about the corporate control mass media, which is now under the control of only 5 corporations, all of which have interlocking boards of directors. So actually you have a handful of people who now control everything that we see and hear. And I'm not just talking about news. I'm talking about movies, music, TV, cable, satellite, billboards, magazines, book clubs, you name it. It's all owned by this handful of people, and they only tell you what they want you to hear. In fact, it's the old adage that the freedom of the press belongs to the guy that owns the press.